Welcome to Flanders Game, your home for One Piece TCG content. Catch me on Twitch and subscribe for more videos and gameplay. In this video, I'll be doing a Perona deep dive. Starting off, we have a best hand breakdown, where I've broken down the cards into 5 different categories: 2Ks, early game, mid-game support, removal, and endgame. The idea being with this deck is that you want to have at least one of each, as we're looking for the diversity across our hand to be able to respond to any type of opponent. In the bottom row, we have our top or best in each category, with Sengoku and Kuzan tying. Second row will be our second best options, and third being our last resorts. Starting off in the 2K category, we ideally want to be seeing Mihawk, as we can't search for this card, and it really helps us establish an early game board. This is followed by Suru, giving us that -2 cost, really helpful for removal, but typically not needed in the early game. Next we have T-Bone, a 5 cost 5k that allows us to KO a 2 cost. For the most part, we don't use this card at all. The only real time I've used it is late game to get rid of late game blockers. Otherwise, it's just used to protect life. Next, we have our early game, which consists of Branu being our best option. Branu is always nice because he allows us to establish an early body and search for cards to respond to the appropriate deck. It is also a big use in swinging into early blockers and early level characters using the rest ability of Perona. Next we have Rosinante. For the most part, we don't want to be playing this at the beginning because we want to use it to protect our Kuzans and Ryumas later on in the game, but occasionally against certain aggressive decks, you want to be playing it to block those early attacks. Finally, we have Bartholomew. For the most part, this is just used for a blocker and fixing any hands, and because it's a 3 cost and we want to go second, for the most part we'll be playing it turn 2. In a going first matchup though, it is quite nice to drop and do an early rest of an opponent's searcher and getting that free card draw. Next we have our mid-game support, with first up being Kuzan. This card allows us to draw, which allows us to keep getting through our cards and making sure we see those that we can't search for, and it allows us to get anything in range for our Ryumas to KO later on. It is important to note though that this card has a huge target on its back and will be KO'd by opponents' abilities. Next we have Shirahoshi. This allows us to give something -4 cost and acts as a blocker, and it's a great combo with Ryuma to kill anything 8 or 9 cost depending on your leader ability and if it's rested. Lastly we have Borsalino. This is a bit of a throwaway blocker that for the most part we use for a counter to bring out with Sengoku later in the game. Then we have our removal, starting off with Ryuma being the most important, as it allows us to KO a 4-costed rested character on play and on KO, which causes some pretty funny interactions, to be honest. Then we've got X-Drake. It's kind of like a poor man's Ryuma, but it is a 1k counter, so it's quite nice to throw away. And lastly, we have Kobe, again a 1k counter, but this allows us to KO a 3 cost with the cost of also having to get rid of a card in hand. This is mainly thrown as a 1k counter just to bring out with Sengoku later in the game, especially when we've already got a Kuzan on board, getting us the ability to KO those 8 costs and potentially 9 costs with Perona effect. Next we have our endgame pieces. For the most part we want to be seeing Sengoku and Kuzan. Sengoku mainly because it's a 1k counter and we potentially need to starve off some early attacks. Or we've got Kuzan because it's not searchable by Branu, so we'll have to draw into it. And being able to rely on that -5 cost late game is always important. This is followed by Jack. Jack, though, allows us to KO other things, has a limit of it being 3 cost or less, which can be a little bit painful if we don't have a Kuzan or Shirahoshi ready for this. Because of that, it's ranked second, as with Sengoku, we're always guaranteeing to at least be playing out a second body. Lastly, we have Hody. Hody is in the deck purely for certain matchups, including Bonnie, any of the purple Luffys, or anything that just leaves Don up, or blockers up. It's mainly our finisher, and we ideally want to be drawing into it using Kuzan and other effects by the time we get to late game. Next up, I'll be showing you what it's like to be playing with the ideal hand, and just shuffling up the deck first, just so you know it's not completely rigged. So we'll be starting off with the ideal hand we saw on that previous graph, with brand new Sengoku Kuzan, Ryuma, and Mihawk. It's important to note that we'll ideally be going second, as we're wanting to respond to our opponent's board most of the time. Starting off here, we'll be drawing for turn and getting a T-bone. Nice getting another 2k counter, especially into some matchups like Yamato. Playing an early brand new, we see 2 Kuzans, so we know what we're picking up. Nice and easy. I think you can clearly tell this isn't rigged, as I have 3 Kuzans at the very beginning. Imagining that we're going to play against certain decks, we might be taking a first hit when they get to 3 dons. We'll just toss away a 2k, or we could potentially be taking a life if we feel like we can risk it in the matchup. Going into our second turn, we end up drawing another 2k with Suru, giving us a bit more flexibility. It's important to note that when we're on these 4 don turns, this is when we can really start showing off the different ways to play this deck. The first example would be playing out a Mihawk to play a Ryuma rested and having 1 don left over. This typically could be used for a 6k swing. This is especially useful into matchups such as the blue-purple Luffy. What we also could be doing is just playing a nice little Kuzan, getting ourselves a draw a card and the -4 cost on attacking. That would have given us a Bart. Or the final play that we could possibly do would be just to hard play a Ryuma. By hard playing a Ryuma and it not being rested, we avoid it being attacked and still get the KO effect. The idea being that we'll be using the Perona leader effect to rest. For this example, because of the amount of Kuzans, we'll just play this and draw. Going into our potential opponent's turn, we'd be looking to maybe be tossing a couple of 2Ks as we're going to be taking some attacks, or even taking a life. For this example, we're going to expect that Kuzan's going to die. It's pretty common that this happens as he's a huge target, and we'll also probably be taking a life, just in the example that we've been hit by something as well. In this case, we draw an X-Drake. Going into our 6 don turn, we ideally want to be playing at least 2 bodies. This could include Rosinante and a Ryuma, or Rosinante and a Kuzan, or other combinations including Mihawk. They can look like this, with a Kuzan being played out and we would draw. We could replace the Kuzan for a Ryuma to KO something, or we can go even wider by playing a Mihawk into Ryuma with a Rosinante, being us to be able to develop 3 bodies and get a 6k swing in. This is particularly useful for when playing against purple blue Luffy, or we can also swing with brand new as I just showed before against some rested searcher or something. This typically happens on the second turn though. Another example could just be playing an X-Drake if we don't want to risk our KO potential being played out all at once, and if we're pretty comfortable with how the board state looks. We could also use that same don for that 6k swing to KO a 6 cost using Suru and the X-Drake. But for this example, I think we're going to go with the nice little classic and play the Mihawk into a rested Ryuma and a Rosinante. Rosinante being our save us Ryuma from attacks. We get an extra 6k swing in. Going into our opponent's turn, We'll probably assume that we're going to have to spend some cards and lose Rosinante at the very minimum, as they'll be trying to get rid of that Rayuma pretty quickly. Another example, let's say they swing a big hit into Rayuma, we might have to toss a couple of counters just to protect our board, as we really need to be controlling the board as much as possible with this deck. For this example, we'll say that Branu, who's probably swung in the previous turn, is now dead. Lastly, if we're really far behind, we'd probably expect another swing into our Rayuma, because ideally we want to be keeping our board as healthy as possible. Which you pick in that choice mainly depends on what you were playing against. For this, we'll just chuck a Suru, just believing that maybe someone swung in with 7. Next turn we end up drawing a Kobe, which is really nice, and we'll be aiming to toss that when we can to bring out with Sengoku. For the majority of the time when you're in your 8 Don turn, you'll be doing some kind of swing with either giving Mihawk a Don or putting it over to Perona if we're playing against a 6k leader, and Rayuma swinging in. From there, we'll be ideally playing either one of our 7 Don characters, which could either be any of the 3. An early Hody is also possible if you're trying to close out the game quite early against some decks like Bonnie or something. But for this turn, we'll just be playing Sengoku into Kuzan. Next, I'll be going over some painful cards in the meta decks. Charlatan is always painful for us as it stalls out the game by delaying us and gaining opponent's life. God Thread ruins our Hody with the trigger and kills our board. Morley avoids all blockers against us, which we like to play a lot of, while Ivanov will help spam the board, so we need to get rid of this as fast as possible. Then we have Teach, 7 costs, it gets a little bit harder for us to KO, so we want to make sure we've got utility to destroy this, and it tends to kill our own board. Van Olga helps getting our characters within range of this Teach, so we need to make sure we deal with that as well. Unless you feel like the draw on KO will win them the game. Going into Green Purple Luffy, we really want to be avoiding these Sanjis as they're going to be resting a lot of our blockers that we play out, and the Going Merry will be able to stop us from KOing by adding cost onto those Sanji puddings. For Buggy, turn is extremely important, and dealing with the 7 cost Buggy, which is going to be able to stop all of our Kuzans and all of our low cost bodies from swinging in. Well, that's it for me. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching the video. This will probably be the last Perona video for a while, as I'll be looking to try out other decks. But if you want to see more, like, subscribe, and catch me on Twitch.